I don't know if I have this. Oh.
Hey everyone, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Ian, and we're Gearheads here at Backcountry. Today we're going to be talking to you about the best all-mountain ski and snowboard helmets and goggles.
For any questions that you may have related to ski and ride, you can refer to our ski and ride guide, which is going to be up here in this corner.
We're also going to have chapter timestamps below, so check that out and feel free to jump around as needed.
Let's get right into it.
Right on. So we've got our first pairing of a helmet and goggle on the table here. Let's talk it through.
Really quickly, actually, before we get into these specific helmet and goggles, I noticed here on most of our helmets for today, we're gonna have this little yellow MIPS sticker. And I was hoping maybe you could just run us through MIPS so that everyone has a good understanding of what it is and why it's important.
Great call out. So MIPS stands for Multi-Directional Impact Protection System. And basically what it is it's another system in place to help to protect your brain in the event of a crash. So when you go down, there's two different forces acting on your brain. First, there's the straight impact force, your head hitting the ground. But there's a lot of other forces at play. You know, there's going to be friction, your body and the ground rotating around you, and this is putting a lot of rotational force on your brain. So what MIPS does is it allows the inner shell of the helmet to rotate, so those rotational forces are greatly reduced, basically just keeping your brain as healthy as possible.
Maybe while we're on the topic of it, I've heard the rumor that you can hit your head multiple times in this helmet. Maybe you get in a crash, it has MIPS, so you're like, okay, it's fine. I can go wear it again. You get in a second crash. Is that true?
As cool as that would be, unfortunately, these helmets are still single impact only.
Okay.
The MIPS system, just like the shell of the helmet, its effectiveness is greatly reduced once it's been used. So if you're in a serious impact, you're going to want to replace it, even if it has MIPS.
All right, so let's actually talk about the specifics of this helmet here. Do you want to run us through some of the tech on it?
Yeah, so this is the Sweep Protection Adapter MIPS helmet. It's a great helmet packed with features to keep you happy while you're out on the mountain. It's got a nice actually 19 vents. So if it's a warmer day, you can open those up. But if it's cold or just blow or pow, you can close them, keep yourself nice, warm and dry. Super easy. You know, you can do it on the fly depending on how you're feeling temperature-wise.
Yeah, you can probably reach that on mountain too when it's on your head.
Yeah, so speaking of convenience, the buckle on this is a fidlock, which means it's magnetic. It's not like one of those clip ones. Super easy to use with gloves on. It just pops out, pops right back in, very fuss-free, super easy to use. It's just convenience is always awesome in my book. You also get really great goggle compatibility. So first of all, you get this nice goggle strap in the back. Just keeps your goggles nice and locked down. If you go down on a pow day, they're not gonna come flying off your head and you get to go dig through the snow for an hour trying to look for them. They're always gonna be nice and secure. You also get a goggle garage on the front of the helmet with some nice vents. What this does is it keeps the goggles a little bit more recessed. You can avoid that dreaded gaper gap, and you get a little bit more ventilation through the helmet just to help with fogging issues or anything like that.
Quick question, because sometimes I find myself between sizes for helmets, and I know that fit is incredibly important. Is there any feature on this helmet that helps me if I'm kind of between sizes and I want to make sure that it's like really locked in on my head?
Great question. Helmet fit is super important. You don't want that to be too loose, otherwise it won't be doing its job, and it's really easy to dial in fit with this. You get a nice dial on the back that just helps you get the perfect fit. Super nice, easy to use. You can use it with gloves on in case you're switching out layers, putting a hat on, anything like that. Just really nice, simple, and straightforward.
All right. You flipped it upside down, and I see some zippers there on the ear flaps.
Yes. So these ear flaps, you've got options. First of all, they're totally removable, as is the liner. So you're sweating in there. Sometimes it's a good idea to wash things unless you like that marinade. In addition to being removable, they're also audio compatible. So they don't come with an audio system built in, but it's super easy to put one in there if you want to have some tunes on the hill. Next up, we've got some goggles that we thought would be a great pairing with this helmet.
But before we get into these goggles, let's kind of talk about a quick PSA on when you're shopping for goggles, what do you really want to be looking for? So something that you're going to see on a lot of these goggles is a VLT rating, and that's going to stand for visible light transmission. And so there's going to be a percentage that is associated with each goggle lens. It's really helpful because if you're actually on the Backcountry site and you go to size chart, you're going to be able to pull up that entire VLT rating. In the percentages, when you're looking at a lower percentage, that means less light is coming through, which means means a lower percentage is associated with your higher sun days. So you think West Coast, really, really sunny, you want a lower percentage. And on the opposite end, you want a higher percentage for kind of like your East Coast cloudy days. Also important to note, which you'll see here that we have 2 different lenses for this goggle. I think that's really great for places like where we live in Utah, where we can have really dark days where it's just snowing constantly, and then out of nowhere, the snow will stop. It's a bluebird sunny day. This is why it's really great sometimes to have 2 different lenses, so you can have one with a lower percentage and one with a higher percentage, so that you can swap them out depending on what the light is looking like for that day. While we're on goggles, let's talk about the goggle that you have here.
So these are the Smith IO Mag goggles, and these are some of our favorite goggles. They keep you comfortable, they work really well, have so many options depending on the style you're looking for, so let's dive in.
All right, so you said IO Mag. I'm assuming mag has to do with magnetic.
You're right on the mark there. The mag stands for magnetic lens retention. Basically, it does just stand for magnet, which means it is super easy to swap the lenses out on these. These goggles actually come with 2 sets of lenses in the box, usually a highlight and a low light lens like you see here. So if it is one of those days where you start the day out and just blowing storm, but then all of a sudden it's bright as can be, all you have to do is you've got these little latches right here. Just undo that and the lens pops right out. Super easy to take off. Then you can pop a new one in, like so. That's it.
So easy to change.
Super easy. So you can change the lens out on a chairlift. It's much easier than trying to pop the lens out of the frame. It's easier to avoid touching the lenses, which I didn't demonstrate very well, but it is.
Would you say this lens is easy to change with the goggles on your face? Like you have your helmet on, you have your goggles down, you're trying to change them right there.
It's possible. It's much easier than a non-mag system.
Okay.
With this one, the latches are kind of recessed behind these little joints here.
Okay.
So the access to it, it's a little bit awkward, but I've seen it done.
Great. Should we move on to the women's?
Let's talk it through. All right, so it looks like we've got our first pairing up on the table for women. What do you got there?
Yeah, so we will start with the helmet here, and this is going to be the Pret Lyric X2 MIPS helmet, and this is actually the Caroline Gleick edition.
Nice.
Really pretty. You got that white with a little bit of rainbow color in there. It's kind of fun. The first things to kind of note about this helmet and the differences from what we were just talking about is this one only has 12 vents as opposed to the 19 that you saw on that last one. And these ones do not open and close. They're kind of just permanently open. You can see kind of the vents up here on the top, and you have a little bit on the front here. And then also something to note with that front is this visor that you have right here. It's a small one, but still kind of nice for those heavy snow days, keep it out of your eyes, out of your goggles a little bit more. And then we will start to look at the fit. We're gonna have this same kind of tightener here, which is really great for just micro adjustments of a helmet, because like we talked about before, you really want your helmet to fit. You can do baggy clothes, you can do too big for you goggles. None of that's nearly as important as having your helmet really fit snug and well. Looking at the closure system, we have what Pret calls the Quick Release RSC system. It's the ripcord system, but this is made by Fidlock, so same idea. Magnet, really ideal for when you wear mittens because mittens are superior to gloves. So you want to be able to open and close your helmet pretty easily. Moving over to our goggle choice here, we are going to have the Smith IO Mag S ChromaPop goggles, and that S really just stands for small. So these are going to be a little bit of a smaller fit compared to what we were looking at on your side over there. Kind of smaller sizes, so anyone with a smaller framed face, these are going to fit you a lot nicer.
Do the smaller frames have the same release system for the lenses as the larger ones?
Yeah, they do. It's going to be that same kind of just click this and pop them off like that. And then, all of a sudden it started dumping snow. You need to change them out, pop these back on, go back to this side, click it in place.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, these are really great. And then most Smith goggles, these included, are gonna have that anti-fog, anti-scratch treatment to them, which is really ideal because if you get a scratch on your goggles, you see it immediately. And same with that fog, sometimes you're really heating up if you need to do a quick little climb, little sidestep. So that anti-fog is really necessary.
Yeah, it goes a long ways just towards happiness on the hill, being able to see clearly. And
yeah.
Smith does a great job with that. So on these goggles, is there anything to help keep them in place on your helmet? You know, you don't want them sliding down or up.
Yeah, you don't want to be that dreaded person in the lift line with your goggles hanging off the back of your helmet. It's a little embarrassing. We've all seen it. You don't want to be that person. So on the inside of this strap here, you're going to see these 2 lines of grippers. And so that is actually going to hold really nicely against the side of your helmet. You know, you can't move this. It's gonna hold it in place, which I think is gonna be really helpful for those days where you're just kind of not paying attention. You throw your goggles up on top of your helmet and they're gonna stay in place really nicely.
That's good. Just make sure your style's on point, even if you're not paying attention.
Always. All right, should we move on to our next men's pick?
Let's do it.
Okay, I see that is a Pret helmet, it looks like. Do you wanna talk to us about some of the specs of this one?
I would love to. So this is the Pret Fury MIPS, which means it has MIPS, and it's also got a lot of other cool features to help keep you happy on the mountain. So like that last helmet we talked about, you've got a little bit of a visor here. What that does on those super snowy days, keeps that snow off your goggles. You don't have to worry about any moisture getting in there. This is a really well ventilated helmet, and on the top, for warm days, you can just leave it open, but if it's super snowy and cold out, you can go ahead and close those up. Just no matter the conditions you're riding in, you're gonna be super dialed.
Speaking of closed, what about that closure system? What are we looking at for this one?
So like the other ones, we've got this fidlock buckle, which is super easy to use even when you're wearing gloves or mittens, as we discussed previously. So super easy to open, super easy to close, fuss-free, keeps you safe. It's always good to have your helmet buckled, and this just makes sure it's buckled all the time.
And I know, to each their own, patterns, prints, colors, whatever. Does this helmet come in a couple different options?
This does. You know, if you're really looking to be flashy on the hill, you know, you can get some kind of design like this that really stands out. If you want something a little bit more muted, Pret has you covered. No matter what your aesthetic is, there's going to be something that works for you.
All right, why don't you talk to me about the goggle retention system on this helmet? It looks a little bit different than some of the ones that we've been looking at.
Yeah, so as we mentioned previously, always good to keep your goggles on your head, and Pret does a great job making sure that happens. It's also super easy to use. So you've just got this little elastic strap that hooks in nicely. So super easy to get your goggles under there, super easy to keep them locked in place. Pretty low profile, so you don't have to worry about it getting knocked off or anything like that. It's there when you need it, and just basically, out of sight, out of mind, just does its job, worry-free.
While we've been really trying to drive home this whole idea of helmet fit and why it's so important, I kind of wanted to talk about how different brands seem to fit a little bit different. Some people have an oval-shaped head, some are a little bit more narrow, a little bit more wide. Do we feel like between brands, sometimes that can kind of change?
When you're talking about one specific brand, oftentimes the helmets from that brand will fit similarly, but brands differ. So, we're talking about Pret here, we talked about Sweet Protection earlier. The shape of their helmet offerings is going to change.
Okay.
And that's one of those points where our Gearheads can really help.
Definitely.
You can't really get the right fit without trying things on, but we can give you some pretty good advice. Obviously it's a really subjective thing, but reach out to a Gearhead. We'll be happy to help you just get dialed in with the perfect fit.
All right, let's talk about these goggles that you have in front of you.
Yeah, so the goggles that we chose to pair with this helmet are the POC Zonula Clarities. And the big kind of selling point for these is that they offer a massive field of view. As you can see, these lenses are super round. There's basically no obstructions all the way around your peripheral vision. So visibility is the name of the game here. You don't have anything in your field of view, just the trail in front of you.
So we've kind of already talked about these silicone grippers on the inside, but I did notice with these goggles, they have this kind of firmer silicone on the initial sides. What is that kind of helpful for?
What that does is, I'm sure you've seen the people on the hill whose goggles are all sorts of skitty-wampus. Just straps going everywhere, just, doesn't look dialed. This basically eliminates a big part of that. Make sure your goggle straps are perfectly straight going around the helmet, keeps things in line so you just look super 100% dialed at all times. It really just keeps those straps in check.
Yeah, sounds convenient, really thought through. And then should we talk about the lenses? I know that POC has a lot of different kind of tech that comes with their lenses. What are these?
Yeah, so these are POC's Clarity lenses. POC has a variety, as you mentioned, a variety of different lenses. We spoke about VLT earlier, so you get a whole range of different lens tints, really dialed in for any sort of condition you're gonna hit. these goggles don't have that same magnetic system that we talked about earlier, which means that changing the lenses in and out is not quite as convenient.
But you can change the lenses on these?
They are interchangeable.
Okay.
You just have to pull the lenses out of the frames, which it's a little bit harder to do, especially if you're trying to change them out on the chairlift or something. Something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's great.
In terms of other features, you get great ventilation. You've got an anti-fog and anti-scratch treatment on these lenses.
Fantastic. All right, so I know our next pairing, we're gonna have a POC helmet and POC goggles, so maybe we should just roll into those.
Yeah, let's do it. So it looks like we've got our final pairing on the table, and it appears to be pretty matchy-matchy.
It is pretty
what do we got going on
matchy-matchy.
here?
We have the POC Fornix helmet. First of all, this is a really cool color, and I really like it paired with this goggle, and we'll kind of talk about the compatibility of the two in just a minute, but we'll talk about the specifics of the helmet first. So let's start with the ventilation on this. We're gonna have this ventilation on the back where you can open for those hotter days, and then just slide that closed on those cooler days. And I really like this dial because I just think, when you're on hill, you want something that you can do with mittens on like we talked about earlier, and that's one where you can just reach up, kind of move it back and forth depending on how the weather changes throughout the day.
So what kind of closure system does this have?
So, unlike some of the other ones that we looked at earlier, this closure system is actually just going to be your classic buckle.
Gotcha.
So one of these, you don't have that magnet to kind of secure it really quickly. So, if that's something that is important to you, I do think that this is worth noting. Personally, I've never had an issue with this closure system, so I'm perfectly okay with this.
It has worked for a long time.
It has.
Does this one, I know we're talking, there's a big emphasis on helmet fit and everything like that. If you're in between sizes, what do you got to kind of make sure you're dialed in?
So we have this back 360 dial. So same thing again, this is just gonna give you those micro adjustments. So if you're feeling a little bit in between sizes, or even if you are true to your size and you just kind of want to feel a little bit more grip around your head, this is really gonna be great for that.
Gotcha. What else do we have going on with the helmet? It looks like they've got a pretty soft looking ear pad. Are those removable? Like, can you listen to music through them? What do we got going on?
So these are removable. You just kind of slide them right out, and then you can detach them from the rest of the liner here. But I will note these are not audio compatible, and they do not come with an audio system. So if you're someone who really likes to listen to music, this could be a deal breaker for you, but a lot of times, just take in nature. You don't need all the sounds, So an important thing to note, that could make or break your decision.
So it looks like we've got a pretty well matched pair of goggles here.
Yes.
What features does this have that, obviously, POC looks good on POC, but are there features in the helmet that just keep you happy no matter what goggles you're wearing?
Yeah, so there's some pretty cool ventilation features between these two, and that's compatible between the two that I think are really awesome. We are in Utah. It can get pretty hot here, especially spring skiing. And so something that's interesting is that this helmet has what's called a goggle chimney. And so it has these little ventilation systems right here, and those are actually gonna line up really nicely with the goggle that we have right here. And this is the POC Nexal Goggle. And what's really cool about this is that up top here, you have this ventilation system where for sunny and warm days, you just pop this open, you get a little bit more ventilation here. A little bit colder, you just pop these closed, no more ventilation. And so I think this is really great because when you're having these two together, you can kind of choose, maybe you want more ventilation all the way through, a little bit less. I think you can really dial that in to fit what the temperature of that day is. So with the fit of this goggle to helmet, maybe we'll start to talk about some compatibility here. I think a lot of times it is best if you can line up brands between goggles and helmets, but that's not always the case because Pret doesn't make goggles, so you can actually align a lot of different goggles with Pret helmets. But in this case, let's talk about POC with POC. It's really great with these goggles because you have these outriggers right here, and so this is just gonna really help with that fit going around the helmet. And then for funsies, we might as well just throw these on so you can see how that fit really works. What is really great about these outriggers is that when you pull your goggles down, not only are they kind of a great place to grab the goggles by, but also you have such a seamless fit. And I think that this is really great for, you don't want that goggle gap. No one wants to be that person, Yeah,
it definitely keeps the look nice and clean. And those outriggers, not exactly exclusive to use with POC helmets. It really helps with integration on anything, but with POC specifically, they do match very well, as we can see here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching our video on best helmets and goggles. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe let us know down in the comments what you're wearing this season and what you're really stoked for.
Yeah, and if you have any questions on these helmets, already fit, style, or really anything else, reach out to a gearhead. But until then, we'll see you out there.